Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And after the recent announcement from Disney Plus Day, that world has been brimming with joy and excitement. Now if my voice sounds a little overly giddy, well, sorry but not sorry. I refuse to temper my emotions right now. I'm just too happy to care. Now there were a lot of exciting announcements to come out of this annual event, and I'm sure plenty are rightly excited for shows like She-Hulk, Boba Fett, Pinocchio, and Secret Invasion. I'm looking forward to those shows too. I'll definitely watch them when they come out on Disney Plus. But for me personally, over 99% of my excitement came as a direct result of X-Men '97, the new animated series for 2023 that's set to continue the beloved 90s cartoon. For X-Men fans of many generations, this is like the Beatles getting back together to tour with Nirvana. It's a big freaking deal. And when I first heard the announcement, I refused to believe something that awesome could actually happen. I had to rub my eyes, shake my head, and pinch myself a dozen times to make sure I wasn't dreaming. But this is real. This is happening. X-Men the Animated Series, the show that introduced an entire generation to X-Men and comics in general, it's coming back. Just saying that out loud puts a big smile on my face. It also has me humming that iconic intro theme in my head more often than usual. Now, I could talk for hours about why the 90s X-Men cartoon was so groundbreaking for its time, both as a show and as an avenue for comic book fans. I could also recount plenty of stories about me rushing home from school as a kid just so I could catch the latest episode or rewatch my favorites. But at the risk of overdosing on sheer joy, I'll just focus on the substance of this incredible announcement, while also speculating a bit on what we could see, what I'd like to see, and what this could mean for the future of the franchise. Now, in terms of specifics, we don't yet know a whole lot, but what we do know is still very promising. The current title of the series is X-Men '97, and it is confirmed that this show will be a direct follow-up to the show that ended its run in 1997. And many of those involved, from the producers to the directors to the surviving voice actors, including the voice of the original Wolverine himself, Cal Dodd, they're all returning. That's incredibly encouraging because for a number of years now, many of these same people have teased the possibility of a series revival. Some have even advocated for it. And in doing so, you can genuinely tell that these people loved working on this show and it really meant a lot to them. The prospect of them all coming back, rather than someone else taking over and trying to revamp what they created, it just feels so fitting. But sadly, not everyone from the original cast can return. Norm Spencer, the voice of Cyclops, David Hemblen, the voice of Magneto, and John Colicos, the voice of Apocalypse, have all passed away. Now hopefully, each one of them can get a proper tribute in this show. But it also opens the door for a new crop of voice actors to carry on their legacy. But as for the actual story surrounding that legacy, well, we still don't know much about that just yet. But those who remember the series so fondly, and the bittersweet way it ended, can still dare to speculate. So that's exactly what I'll do, while also sharing some of my own hopes about what I would like to see. And again, I might get overly excited here. But again, I make no apologies for that. Now, previously on X-Men, a phrase I'm sure resonates with many fellow X-Men fans, the original series ended on a solemn but hopeful note. In the final episode, entitled Graduation Day, Charles Xavier was attacked by Henry Peter Geier during one of his anti-mutant tirades. It was serious, so much so that Xavier was practically on his deathbed by the end of the episode, even offering his beloved X-Men words of praise and love before he ultimately succumbed. But then, in a last-ditch effort to save their mentor, they called upon Empress Lilandra of the Shi'ar, someone who the X-Men had helped in previous episodes, and who had also fallen hard for Charles Xavier. She said she could save him, but it meant taking him into space for an extended period, leaving the X-Men on their own and to carry on without their mentor. They all say their goodbyes and stand together one last time. It was a beautiful moment, and one that showed just how much the X-Men had grown under Xavier's guidance. However, it was revealed in later interviews with the producers that this wasn't necessarily supposed to be the end. Had the series been allowed to continue, the next season would have involved a lengthy time skip. The team even disbands for a while. But then, when they get a distress call from the Shi'ar, they're all brought back together again, and they journey into space to save their mentor. Now that could definitely be a solid foundation for this new series. And given how long it's been since the finale, a time skip seems appropriate. As for the duration of that time skip and what happened in between, well, that's where some of the speculation can begin. It's hard to know what the producers and writers have in mind at the moment, but if the comics are any indication, we might already have some clues. You see, back in 2015, there was a brief miniseries called X-Men 92, which wasn't a direct follow-up to the cartoon, but it still took place within the same world. While I doubt the writers and producers will follow that series too closely, it does offer some tantalizing possibilities. In that series, the X-Men encounter some of the more recent villains from the comics, namely Cassandra Nova, who actually debuted just a few years after the show ended. It also brought back some characters that appeared only briefly in the show, like Cyclops, and gave them larger roles. But one of the biggest shifts came in terms of the overall structure of the team. In the very first arc, Cyclops and Jean Grey decide to leave the team, heading off to spend some quality time together and possibly start a family. And in turn, Cyclops passed the torch on to Storm, trusting her to lead the X-Men moving forward. And I think that would be a great way to start the new show. After all, Storm had shown her ability to lead in multiple episodes, and she has been a leader in the comics as well. Perhaps she's the one who gets the message from the Shi'ar that the X-Men are needed to save Xavier. And she could be the one who helps rally the rest of the team, wherever they might be. Now that could still present plenty of challenges. Depending on the length of the time skip, I can definitely envision Cyclops and Jean Grey stepping back to start a family. They did talk about having children in the show, and there were a few on-screen hints as to them being Cable's parents. Maybe they could even have their own arc where they travel into the future to raise baby Cable. Another plot lifted straight from the comics, no less. But I have a feeling it'll be Wolverine who needs the most convincing to come back. In the show, he frequently ran off on his own for extended periods, and I can see him being more reluctant than most to return. Perhaps this is where Storm could enlist Jubilee to coax him into coming back, and from there, the adventures could really get going. But what could those adventures entail? Well, if the writers follow the original plan, it would likely involve reuniting with Xavier and the Shi'ar. Perhaps they'll need to rescue him from an invasion, perhaps from the Skrulls, the Brood, or the Bradoon. And maybe in this show, he and Lilandra have a child. In the comics, they had a daughter named Xandra. That could certainly make things interesting / awkward for the X-Men. Or maybe they would want to change up their original plan. Perhaps instead of focusing on space adventures, they can establish some new threats for the X-Men to take on. Personally, I'd love to see this show draw inspiration from the recent comics surrounding Krakoa. It certainly doesn't have to happen exactly like the comics, but the show did have numerous plots about mutants forming their own nation. And maybe Krakoa could be the latest and most successful attempt to date. But unlike the comics, perhaps it wouldn't be Xavier and Magneto who found it. Perhaps someone like Moira or Cassandra Nova are the ones who set it up. And the X-Men just get involved later on, possibly after a devastating event, maybe something akin to E is for Extinction from the comics. But even if they don't go the Krakoa route, I think there's a lot for the show to work with in terms of new villains and threats. A new Hellfire Club could definitely cause more problems, especially if Xavier is out of the picture. I can totally see Emma Frost taking advantage of that situation, no longer having to deal with the world's most powerful telepath. And perhaps we could also get something akin to M-Day or House of M, albeit one that doesn't rely too heavily on the Avengers. Besides, the show did have quite a few reality-warping mutants in play, most notably Proteus. Or, if the show really wanted to raise the stakes, they could bring Onslaught into the picture. Perhaps he could be the one to create this new reality that the X-Men have to free themselves from. There are just so many plots to choose from, and possibly some that are entirely original. And I think once the show reestablishes the original cast, then the door will also be open for other new characters to join. And chief among the characters I would love to see show up is Laura X-23 Kinney. Even though she debuted in X-Men Evolution, I think she would be perfect for this show. Specifically, she would offer a perfect contrast to Jubilee, who often acted as a surrogate daughter for Wolverine in the first place. I also think Wolverine learning about Laura would really shake up his world, and it would also give us another teenage character to follow alongside Jubilee. Another character I'd love to see show up is Magic, specifically the older, darker, more empowered version of Magic. While she did show up in the original series, she was just a little girl. I think the story of her becoming Magic would add some uncanny flair to the cast. I also think a villain like Bastion would be a bold new threat, one that would represent a natural evolution of the kind of enemies the X-Men had faced throughout the show. Perhaps he could appear alongside Predator X, the mutant hunting creatures that I'm sure Wolverine wouldn't mind sinking his claws into. There's just so much to choose from, so many possibilities, too many for me to go over all at once. All I know is that this is the most excited I've been for the X-Men franchise in years. I know it'll be a good long while before mutants show up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But if this is Disney and Marvel Studios' way of getting people excited about mutants again, then I'm all for it. But what do you think? What would you like to see from X-Men 97? What characters, plots, and stories do you want to see unfold alongside that classic opening theme? Please let me know, and rest assured, I'll be following news about this series very closely, right up until it debuts in 2023. It may seem a long way off, but trust me, X-Men fans have been waiting for something like this for over 20 years. And for something this awesome, we're willing to be patient. In the meantime, let's all just take a moment to celebrate this truly uncanny news. X-Men the Animated Series is coming back. It's been a long time coming. But if ever the world needed a show to boost our broken spirits, this is it. Thanks for watching, everyone. And thanks for joining me in my world. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, take care and stay safe.